Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Kirsten, and if this is your first time at my channel, welcome. If you are a returner, is that the word? Thanks for tuning back in. So I've been an expat for I think about almost 5 years now, and I've been living in Spain for the past 3 years. And so this video is going to focus on what my life is like living in Spain, particularly as a Black woman. I'm going to do this video in 3 different parts. I'm going to do, the first part is my experience as a language assistant, which is the program that I did that helped get me here in the first place. The second part, I'm going to talk about just day-to-day life, on what it's like living day-to-day. Do I encounter racism? Do I encounter weird interactions on a daily basis? And then the third part will be about my social life, making friends, dating, and all that. So if you want to make sure that you stay up to date with all parts, click the like button and the subscribe button so that you get to hear all about my life and all the different aspects of my life. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to start talking about my experience in Spain as a language assistant. Also, I want to mention to stay tuned until the end of the video because if you are a Black woman like myself and you maybe are thinking about or have recently been accepted into the Auxiliares de Conversación, Auxiliary of Conversation, the language assistant program, I'm going to give you some advice on how to make the most of your experience, especially if you are a Black woman or a woman of color. So, where to start? I found the program online and applied. It's very simple. If you would like a video going into detail about the program, how I found it, what I needed to do, all of that, there's a lot of other videos about that, but if you want particularly my experience with it or my advice, then comment below and I can do a separate video on that. So the biggest thing about being Black and being a language assistant is that you are going to work in a school, and the school may, depending on where the school is, if you're in a bigger city like Madrid, it will be a little bit more diverse. However, working in a small town as I have, my town, there's about 100,000 people, or my city, but the town that I work in actually only has about 1,000 inhabitants. So in reality, I was the only Black person in the school and possibly the only Black person that my students have seen, not really seen, but interacted with. I remember one of the girls, adorable girl, she is, I think, in the infantile class. She is probably 4 or 5 years old and adorable, and we had a great relationship together, and she was always really excited to see me. I was always really excited to see her, but numerous occasions she would grab my hands and she would look at them and she would flip them over, and then she would look at her hands, and she would always ask me in Spanish, she would always ask me why my hands, or why I was brown or Black and why her hands were white, or pretty much asking why we are different skin tones, why we're different colors. I was the first really exposure to someone of a different culture, and that's all very strange for me because I think I've always grown up knowing and celebrating different cultures, and so understanding that that's somewhat of a privilege that I've had to be able to grow up with different cultures, and not every childhood, not every city is like that. So nonetheless, that has never, in the schools, with my relationships with the children, I feel my skin color has never affected that. I feel like the children have never treated me differently because I look different. They're more fascinated and curious. If you found this video, or if you're finding this video helpful or interesting, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're thinking about becoming an expat, whether in Spain or another country, I do travel consultations and I help you to start planning, getting your mind right, get your money right, deciding where to go. I help you to plan your best move abroad, not just so that you can go abroad, but so that you can thrive abroad. So if you're interested in those consultations, you can click the link in my bio, and I would love to help you start creating your dream life abroad. I've been able to talk about Black History Month, and the first school that I worked at, we did a lot of work around, or at least not a lot of work, but at least a couple of weeks around the Civil Rights Movement, Black History Month. I talked about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. I shared a lot of information, and the kids were aware of issues such as racism, because it's a really hard concept, because in the US, civil rights movement, segregation, all of that is something that I grew up learning, everyone knew about, and when they don't have that cultural context, it can be a little bit tricky to talk about those things with them. A really big experience is distinguishing between two different cultures, because a lot of people think that if you're American, they think of American as one culture, but I think a lot of people, both adults and children, sometimes fail to understand, and it's not by any fault, or it's just the way that it is, but understanding that the United States is a massively big country, and even when you look at the maps, it doesn't look like a really big country, but it is. And understanding that American culture is really a melting pot of so many different cultures, and so sometimes I would make distinctions between American culture and Black culture, because sometimes we do things that are different. We eat foods that are different. It's been nice to be able to kind of share my two different cultures, which is American culture and Black culture, and being able to be somewhat of a representative to these children, so hopefully, when they go out in the world and they meet someone that looks like me, or they meet someone that works with someone that looks like me, they already have this positive experience in their head, and so they know to just look at Black people or people of a different color as people, and not necessarily strictly looking at their race or their color. And when it comes to with the teachers, I haven't really experienced that. I'm thankful for that, but I know other Black Oxes have had some type of resistance, or even sometimes in the adult classes with the material, not always having accurate information. So that I know has been a challenge for my fellow Black Ox. So that's that. And now I'm going to give you some tips on what to do if you are a Black girl and about to become a language assistant in Spain. Okay, so tip number 1 is don't be afraid to speak up and set boundaries. And this is a general tip for anyone who wants to be an Ox, is that setting boundaries is definitely okay. I know that it can be a little nervous, a little bit difficult in the beginning, because you're new, you're in a new country, you're learning the language, there's a lot going on, so sometimes we can kind of push setting those boundaries under the rug because we're so preoccupied about just adjusting. But if someone number 2 is to reach out, or tip number 2 is to reach out to your other Black Ox. There might not be another Ox in your city. I know that I definitely have gone, to other cities. I've taken the bus 2 hours away to connect to other Black Oxes. But really reach out. Facebook groups, it's one of the easiest way to connect, because you're gonna need that community. You're gonna need someone that just gets it. The third tip is know that people are probably gonna come up to you with a lot of questions. And it's because a lot, especially the teachers, especially the adults, because in some parts of Spain, it's really not that diverse. So especially too, because so much of what happens in the United States is broadcasted on the internet, on Facebook, on the news. So people have questions. I've definitely been questioned, not necessarily by my teachers that I've worked with, but other people out and about. And I'll probably repeat this in the follow-up video, but people are going to ask you questions. I know police brutality in the United States has come up. The George Floyd incidents, when that was going on, that came up. So there will be a lot of questions. So sometimes, so know if hopefully another event like George Floyd doesn't happen, but if it does happen while you're abroad, know that some people will come up to you and ask you about it. And it's also okay to say, like, what, right now I'm not comfortable talking about that. We can have this discussion another time, or that's a bigger conversation that I don't have time to get into right now. Whatever you feel comfortable saying, but know that you're gonna get a lot of questions. And sometimes that's okay, because sometimes it's an opportunity for conversation. Sometimes it's an opportunity to highlight maybe different things that they didn't see on the news, or different information that they didn't get in that viral video. And that's the nice thing about it, is that you can have wildfires in California. I remember a couple of the teachers coming up to me and asking me, like, how's your family? Are they okay? Was it, was anyone affected by the fires? So because our news in the US is worldwide, when those sorts of kind of those disasters happen, it's nice that I've received sometimes, like, support and concern from my teachers. So